Welcome back to the Great World Podcast. I'm your host, Isaac Hedges, joined by Jake. What do you have for us today?
Well, we want to go ahead and fact check something, and we'll see if this actually works here. I think it's working.
Yeah, so what is it we're fact checking today?
We are fact checking some news about the Los Angeles wildfires.
Okay.
So, we think so at least. We may be fact checking something else.
And they may be fact checking us.
Yes. If we show the wrong thing, they most certainly might. So, you'll have to hold us up to that. Now it appears that things are starting to work. This is live. This is what happens live, y'all. Okay. We think there are some very serious fires, and they are threatening Hollywood right now in Los Angeles. And the Hollywood Hills have been evacuated for that reason. Some of them a little bit deeper into Hollywood have been ordered to be on high alert, as there is a potential for the Sunset Fire to spread and potentially damage historic places in Hollywood. And so we want to make it very clear that this is a very serious situation. But unfortunately, people have been taking it a little bit to the extreme and have been putting out some false information as well as some false images on social media. And so we would want to bring a little bit of some clarification to that. So I guess here's what shows the map of all the different fires. So we have the Hearst fire, the Palisades fire. This has been by far the worst. It spread very rapidly. We had winds gusting around 100 miles per hour, which is equivalent to a Category 2 hurricane and even equivalent to a low-grade tornado. And so that is what kind of winds sparked these fires. We also had very low humidity, very dry conditions. So this is typically considered the wet season across the western U.S. There's a lot of atmospheric river events that bring in a lot of rain and snow, and that usually eliminates the fire risk. Typically during the fall, that's when we have the worst of our fires, late summer and fall. But typically during the wintertime, we get a lot of rain and snow, and that's what builds our Sierra snowpack in California, which is a major water resource for the state of California. But in the recent months, we've had a much drier period during this typical wet season, and that has led to an increased fire risk even during the winter months when there typically wouldn't be.
Right.
And so that's kind of what started these fires. And then we had the Santa Ana winds, which kicked in over the last several days. And we saw them Tuesday afternoon reach their peak of winds gusting 90 to 100 miles per hour. And so that made these fires at times travel around 300 to 500 yards per minute.
Wow.
And that is why they're 0% contained at this point in time. The Palisades fire at least is.
Okay.
So they usually, they fly over these fires to try to put them out, but have not been able to do that the past couple of days, but now are able to.
Okay, so they are now able to.
Yes, and so that is why we haven't had a lot of containment up until this point. But now, since yesterday, starting yesterday evening, they were able to begin that process. And so that is why some of the fires, not the Palisades one, but like the Hearst fire and the Eaton fire further to the north, those have been put more under control.
Okay. That's good.
And as of right now, Hollywood itself, as far as like the historic square and the homes and businesses there and the theater, has not burned yet. So that is the good news. The sign, a lot of people have been posting these images the last 24 to 36 hours of the sign on fire. And so that is what we are here to kind of address. As you'll notice, the fire that has been threatening Hollywood is 10 miles to the west of the Hollywood sign. Therefore, the Hollywood sign is not on fire, but people have been posting images of it on fire. So you might be wondering how that could be possible. It's not from a past event. It's not from a present event. None of that. It's not a couple of pictures being overlapped and blended together. It's simply an AI-generated image. And so this kind of goes back to what we've covered in our AI series.
Well, Jake, with all the fires going on in California, and they are rapidly spreading, it would seem. There's little to no containment at this point. And as close as that is to Hollywood, I think it would be reasonable to believe that the Hollywood sign had caught on fire. You say that these images are artificially generated.
Yes.
Well, why is that, and how is that?
Well, I think as we've mentioned in our previous AI episodes, that these images are being able to be generated that are false.
Okay.
But I guess as to how we know that they're not real, like how we know that the Hollywood sign is not on
How
fire.
do you know
Yeah, how do we
that it
know that
isn't
it,
on fire?
yeah, how do we fact check the images that we're seeing? Well, there's a few different things. For one, and we've talked about this with artificial intelligence, there is some inaccuracy.
Right.
And there is certainly that within this as well.
Naturally, there's always some margin for error, and there are also often hallucinations within artificial intelligence, things that don't actually exist that are dreamed up, so to speak. That's why they're called hallucinations. So that certainly is possible. Do you think this is the sort of thing that we're looking at?
Yes, and the way that it can be confirmed is by three different things that I identified within one of the AI
Okay.
generated
What are those
images.
three things?
Well, for one, there was an extra letter in the Hollywood sign.
Okay.
So that's a little bit of a problem. There was, so you had Holly, and then when you got to Wood, it was WOO, and then there was another O slash kind of a D. It was like an O, a D, if you were to combine those two letters, and then there was a D at the end. So,
Right. And I don't frequent the area, but I don't recall there being a letter added to Hollywood. So
I don't think there has been at any point in time. It's been there since 1923. The only change that's been made since 1923 was in 1933 when it was no longer eliminated because it was costing too much during the Great Depression.
uh,
But other than that, there has not been any changes since 1923 to the spelling of Hollywood. And so that's one way to identify it. A couple more that might be, let's say, a little bit more detailed is if you go at the very bottom of the picture, you can clearly see that there's a mark at the bottom that shows the AI company in which was used to generate it.
all right. So out of curiosity, what company was that?
Well, it was the Elon Musk one.
Oh, yes.
I'm actually not familiar with
Yes,
the
I recall
name.
that it's associated with X. I believe it was Gork.
Yes, that is
Something like
correct.
that?
Yes, I forgot what the exact name
I
of
had
it.
heard of that.
So
I don't know a great deal about it, though. Do you?
I don't. Really, the only, I guess, connection that I can make is the fact that it was, that there was an explosion that took place on New
Uh-huh.
Year's morning in Las Vegas, a car, and that was caused by AI, and it was outside of the Trump Tower,
Right.
or Trump Hotel, excuse me.
Mhm.
So the Trump Hotel is where that took place.
Right. And well, when you mentioned that it was this Gork, which is tied to X, um, but Elon Musk started and talking about how all people are posting this on social media. Well, that makes sense because it is tied to X, and the database for largely for that artificial intelligence engine is the posts on X. So that would make sense that it would have generated an image like that if that's what people were posting.
Yeah, and that was one of the more common ones that was seen, but definitely unrealistic when you think about the different things that were on it. And a few other things that were not very realistic is the timestamp. The timestamp read 4:47 p.m. Tuesday afternoon.
Uh-huh.
Couple of things to say about that. First of all, the Hollywood fire, the one that's near Hollywood, didn't actually start until Wednesday evening. Okay? Second one is that we noticed that it was dark outside in the photo, but it said the photo was taken in the middle of the afternoon. So a couple of issues as well with the
Uh-huh.
timestamp.
Right. Very fishy there. And, this is a fairly new platform, this Gork, and we've talked about different threats associated with using artificial intelligence, the deep fakes, and different things like that. And to my knowledge, this isn't exactly something that we've seen. I mean, on this show, we've messed around a bit with ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot, both of which run on the GPT-4 framework. So it's not exactly the same case. We're using some social media platform for the database. So this is a little bit different. And along with that, I'm sure it has its own distinct benefits, but naturally, along with that, its own risks, this being one of them.
Yes, and so when we were talking about how there's positive and negative things, and that there's a lot of great things that artificial intelligence has done, we also said that there's a lot of drawbacks and some things that maybe need to be regulated a little bit more. This is most certainly an example, and this is why you have to look very closely when you look.
That this was happening. Because I remember when you first came across this story and shared it with me, already knowing of the California fires that were going on, I thought, oh, well, is that not actually happening? I mean, there are fires going on kind of in that neighborhood, in that area. That wouldn't be terribly unreasonable to believe. And likewise, you say people were posting this all over social media. How many people do you reckon really fell for it?
Well, it appeared from the article that there was thousands of people who actually believed that these were real. And that's the other problem when it comes to serious events being made by artificial intelligence to be taken to the extreme is when we see something really extreme, we react. We don't really even think about the fact there's a misspelling inside of it. We don't look very closely. And so I caution everybody, when you see something like that, or you see something that seems really crazy, like an image, look at it very closely. Does it actually look realistic? Is it misspelled? Is there, you mentioned how there was a hand in one picture that had 6 fingers. I mean, just look very closely because, or really not even, you don't even really have to look super closely. Just even pay attention at all. And you might notice that indeed there are some issues when artificial intelligence images are posted, and it's very easy to identify what those issues are.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, that concludes here our live update. So just if you see those pictures, just keep in mind that as of right now, the fire has not made its way to the Hollywood sign. In fact, there's even a body of water that separates the Hollywood sign and the Sunset Fire within those 10 miles.
So keep an eye out for those, maybe with a healthy bit of skepticism, because after all, this turned out not to be true.
But keep in mind that these fires are a very serious situation too. So
yet another example of the very real risks associated with artificial intelligence. We'll continue to cover that in our artificial intelligence series, which has been going on since last season. So if you're interested in that, you can go back to our YouTube channel and check out the videos that we've done in the past. It's an excellent one, and that is an ongoing series. So stay tuned for all of those updates, along with our other live updates that we do periodically on elections and things such as that. So, Jake, I believe we're through. If you don't have anything else that you might add,
that is the end. So,
all right. Well, until next time,
I'm Jacob Vollmer.
I'm Isaac Hedges, host of the Great World Podcast, signing off. Until next time, good night and God bless.